Welcome. This is Jean Eaton, the practice management mentor at Information Managers. I'm delighted to have you join us today for the Hangout and our presentation about the Hiring Employees Templates Resource Package. So we're going to get started with our demonstration here today about the Hiring Employees Templates. I'd like to introduce you to your desktop. On the far right, you have a chat button. So you can use the chat button to send us an email about the presentation, and we'll get back to you just as quickly as we can about that presentation or about your question. If I don't have time to answer your question during the presentation today, or if you are joining us for the replay, I will reply back to you by email just as quickly as we can. So the chat button is on the right-hand side of your screen. If you can't locate that, if you're having problems with some technology, I fully understand. You can send us an email at jean@informationmanagers.ca. So we're going to take a look at the hiring employees resource package. And we're going to get started with our presentation here. So our employees are central to our practice. And it's very important that we hire the right employees to our practice. And being able to position yourself as an organization that is going to respect the employees, is going to provide them an opportunity to provide some meaningful employment and a way to be able to provide your patients with a good practice, is going to help you be able to recruit those good employees. Hiring the right employees will make your practice productive and provide a good service for your patients and clients. It will be a positive place to work and to receive care. It will also help to promote your business. Having a policy and procedures and a routine about how you hire employees is going to help you recruit employees that are the right fit for your practice. It will help you clearly state expectations for your employees and develop great first impressions to attract the ideal candidate for your practice. We have put together for you a hiring employee resource package. And on the website, informationmanagers.ca/hiring-templates, we have the ebook for you about the document management tip, Hiring Employees Resource Guide. When you purchase the resource guide, you have access to the Microsoft Word templates that you can quickly customize for documents for your practice. Today we're going to talk about the types of documents that are available to you in the resource package and take you through those steps one by one. We know that our customer service expectations is going up. We need an engaged workforce to be able to meet our service expectations and to keep employees engaged. Engaged employees are great predictors of having a better business. When employees feel that they matter, that they're engaged in the job, you get a 50% lower turnover rate for your employees, 56% higher than average customer satisfaction, and 38% above average productivity. And it relates directly to your bottom line. We know that hiring employees takes time, effort, and energy, not only to recruit somebody and to hire them, but to make sure that they're well orientated and trained and become productive in your organization. It takes time to learn a new job. All of that time that you spend as a trainer and to have new employees coming into your practice has a direct impact on the bottom line of your organization. So if we take the time to get the right employees at the right time, we're going to have higher patient satisfaction. We're going to have better employees who are going to stay with us longer, and that is absolutely a win-win situation. So I'm encouraging you to take time to make sure that you've got a good process to hire employees. We want to make sure that you have good employees in an existing practice. So if you've already got good employees in your organization, your number one job is to keep the good people that you've already got. If you're starting a new practice, your number one job is going to be hiring the right people. Make sure that you've left yourself enough time and resources to be able to locate those right people. Even if it's an entry level position, even if you're hiring somebody on an hourly basis, these are the people that are at the front of your practice and they're going to make or break your practice. So you want to make sure that you've compensated them appropriately, that you've provided the right training to them, and that you are supporting them throughout that employee journey. There are 9 key steps in the hiring process. The first step is determining the essential skills for the job. What type of employees do you need in your organization, and what types of things must they do? So it goes up beyond what the individual has in their skill sets, but what does the business need to have done? If you have people who are really good about managing phones, but nobody knows how to do the bookkeeping, you've got a problem. So you need to identify where those essential skills are. When you know what the business needs, then you can put the job tasks to the right people. So if you anticipated perhaps that the clinic manager was also going to do all of the bookkeeping for you, but you've got a great clinic manager who doesn't know how to do bookkeeping, then maybe that task of bookkeeping can go somewhere else, but it still has to be done by somebody. So you need to identify what the essential skills are. You need to develop a job description so that you have a clear understanding about what to expect from your employees and what the employees should be able to expect to do on their job. You need a job posting. How else are you going to let people know that you're hiring? You need to have a clear process for your interview process and to be well prepared and to be able to select the candidates on objective, observable information rather than making sure that there's simply a warm body who can answer the phone. You need to shortlist your employees against criteria. You need to be able to identify and be able to substantiate why did you choose this person over that person. Your gut feeling and the soft skills about how an individual relates to somebody else are very important. But we want to put them in the right perspective. Just because you like somebody doesn't necessarily mean that they're the right employee. At some point, you're going to make a job offer, so we're going to help you with that process. You're going to do the orientation, performance review, and the termination process. So let's get started and take a look at these key steps. On your learning resources guide that you can download right from your website, we've identified some summary information. We've also made available to you a link so that you can download the free PDF preview of the Hiring Employees Kit. So the very first thing that we want to take a look at is the essential skills for that position. Now, we know that our customer service expectations are going up and that you need to have an engaged workforce to keep the employees engaged, that they are productive, that you're getting the business of the work done. And when you have an engaged workforce, then you also have improved patient care. So we want to make sure that we've identified those essential skills to help identify what's needed in the practice and to hire the right employee to fill those needs. Identifying the essential skills for each position is to identify the key tasks, often those things that are most frequently performed in a workday. To determine the essential skills of a position, ask yourself, what does that person in this position do that is unique to the team? What tasks are critical to the practice? Some of these tasks are things that you would expect a new candidate coming to your position will know, that they bring these skills into your organization. And some of them are things that you can train and provide competency and skills development in the organization. So let's take a look, for example, at the essential skills for a medical office assistant or an MOA. In some offices, you might have them be responsible for billing. They might not have to do the entire billing process, but they might need to be able to capture some of that information in your practice. So you need to determine how important will that be in your practice. There might be things that you can teach them if they don't already have as a coming in skill. Can they take an accurate blood pressure reading? Do they know the requirements for when to do a blood pressure reading automatically? What about the educational requirements? It might be something that you want to make sure that they have had some post-secondary training to be able to do. Have they done patient triage? So you're going to ask these types of questions and identify what the essential skills are. For example, for patient triage, you will weight the relative ranking of those skills. So patient triage is something that you can train on the job. However, if they've had any previous experience doing patient triage, you don't have to train them. So you want to give that person or that skill set a value between 1 to 5 about how important is it to, or 1 to 10, about how important is this skill set on the job. So we're suggesting a ranking scale out of 10. 10 is critically important. They must have, as they walk in the door and start the first day of the job, they must be able to do this with competency. 5 can be learned or taught on the job. Patient triage in this example and being able to record weight it's a bonus if they've done this before, but it's something that can be taught. You might even want to create a skills test of the essential skills items. Saying you know how to do something is not the same as showing you know how to do that critical task. So once you've decided what all of the essential skills are of the position, it's going to help you determine what are the essential skills in the job description. Now, you can take those essential skills that you've developed and using our templates, identify which skills that you want in the job description for your organization. So we've given you templates in our for job descriptions for a medical office administrator, interpreter, a clinic manager, and a privacy officer. Each of the job descriptions includes these key categories: minimum education, what are the duties, working conditions, being clear what the dress code is, the educational requirements, salary range, probationary period, and core competencies. So any job description should have these key areas included in that job description. We also suggest that you do a salary review before you hire an employee. So know what the industry standard is in your area. If MOAs, for example, are very difficult to recruit, you might need to have a higher salary than in a location on the other side of the province. So be aware about what the going rate is and make sure that it is a reasonable rate. You're going to attract the high quality candidates with a responsible commensurate compensation plan. So there are some things that you may have more of than others. So maybe you can't pay the top wage or the top salary in your private practice, but maybe there's some additional things that you can provide in that compensation plan that's going to help you recruit those better employees. Maybe free parking might be a really big thing, or on a bus route, flexible hours. All of these types of things are things that you can include in that salary review. So we've given you some suggestions about how to do a salary review, and make sure that you are comparing apples to apples. So wherever possible, take a look at those positions that are currently listed for other organizations and take a look at the job duties and the common requirements to make sure that you're naming your job position something that is commonly known in the location that you are in. It's quite surprising sometimes about the number of unique variances in a particular area. So in your job posting, you want to do the salary review, and I also suggest that you have an application form. Now, many organizations encourage employees to bring a resume, and that's fine. I encourage a resume as well. But having an application form helps to be able to make sure that you're gathering all of the essential information that you need, and that you have a way to be able to streamline and and compare candidates. So in your essential skills, in the very first step, you identified that you needed these particular levels of essential skills. Ask the candidate to respond to those essential skills on the application form. You don't need to spend a lot of time reading through a bunch of resumes to figure out if they've ever done patient triage. If patient triage is important in your practice, put that on the application form and have the candidate respond to that. Have you done patient triage before? Please describe. That way it's going to make it far easier to compare multiple of candidates very easily, and it helps the employee shine and makes the review process better for you. A standard application form makes it easier for you to evaluate each candidate and compare multiple candidates. You can use a paper application form, but I also suggest that you take a look at using a PDF fillable form, which can be exported to a database for easier review and tracking. In your application form is an opportunity for you to be able to position your organization in front of the employee or the candidate and show them where you shine. This is both the opportunity for you to gather information from the candidate and to be able to share the information that's important about your practice to the candidate. Oftentimes the candidate is a little bit early, we might be running a little bit late. They've got time to read that information generally, and perhaps that's something that they can take with them. You can make the application form available online. So if you have a job posting in the paper or in the college or even on internet job boards like Kijiji, you can also provide a link to the application form so that you get a smooth process to get the information in to your office at a time that's convenient for you, and you make sure that you're getting the right information so you don't have a lot of back and forth. Repurpose the application form by asking as much information as reasonable from the candidate to assist you in making that decision for the interview. We want to be able to let the applicants know how you're going to collect their information and how you're going to use it and how long you're going to keep it. So words like this is going to be important on your job position or your application form. Now, your job posting is going to take all of the information that you've already used in the essential skills, the job description, and I'm of the opinion that if you make your job posting with enough detail in it so that you are attracting the employees that are going to be the best match for your clinic. If you know that you are looking for an employee who is going to be available to work every weekend, and that's really important for the position that you're filling, for goodness sakes, put that in the job posting. That way it's fair for the candidate, and it certainly helps your screening process much faster. So be as specific as possible in your job postings. You're going to probably get fewer applications, but you're going to get better quality applications. The more meaningful that you make that job posting, the more likely that you will receive candidates that meet your expectations. Now, the next question is, where are you going to put that job posting? Each location, each geographic area has a variety of different places that are good places to be able to put that job posting. So there will be differences in the local labor market about the positions that you are recruiting. Generally, the best source of recruitment actually comes from referrals. So make sure that other employees in your organization and even your patients know that you are recruiting for a position. If you get an employee who has been a candidate who has been referred to you by another employee or a patient, then that is likely going to be a better quality of candidate for you. They know your organization, they know your culture, and they say, I've got just the right person for you. So it doesn't mean that you have to accept that candidate, of course, but make sure that people know that you are recruiting, because those source of referrals tend to be your highest quality of candidates and most appropriate for your practice. You can also Put your job posting in the local papers. Remember, the community papers, a lot of job postings are going into there. And many of the papers have a digital version of the paper. So if you're going to post in a community paper and they only put out a hard copy, say once a week or perhaps every 2 weeks, they often put the digital version of that community posting online within a day or two, so that you actually get greater exposure both on the internet version and on the paper version. Don't forget the paper version of the job postings. Similarly, don't forget the internet version of the job postings. Many people are very tunnel focused as far as applicants. They are comfortable with one media and not the next. You want to make sure that you get the best candidate for your organization, so make sure that you advertise widely. And I do encourage you to take a look at the local hard copy papers, because they often do have a digital paper as well. Take a look at the training organizations and colleges in your area. They often have job boards, not just for new grads, but for grads that have graduated several years ago and are looking for another position. Take a look at members associations, Clinic Managers Association, the job board for the Registered Nurses Association if you're looking for a registered nurse. You can also actually put on classified ads on things like Kijiji. In our region, that's a really big place to be able to put classified ads. But you need to know your local market. So be aware of where people are currently placing their ads, where they're getting their success, and talk to your similar industries in your region to find out where they find their employees. When you probably want to give yourself at least 2 months to start your employee search before you want the employees to start working. So it takes some time to be able to put your job description, your skill set, and to set up interviews. So you need some lead time. If you get the right candidate, you make an offer, you need to leave enough lead time so that candidate could potentially leave a current position, give their 2 weeks notice or more before they come to your organization. So you really need to leave yourself at least 2 months lead time to be able to do that. In our template set, we have given you sample job postings for clinic managers and MOAs. So now you've got the job posting out and you are ready to start interviewing. Well, not quite. First, you need to prepare for the interview even before you get the candidates. So you need to prepare interview questions, and we suggest that you use behavior description interview questions. So how people respond to certain circumstances in the past is how they're most likely to respond to similar situations in the future. Behavior description interview questions are requests for detailed descriptions of specific on-the-job events or circumstances that the job candidate has experienced. Develop your own BDI questions to request information from the candidate that you can compare to your practice's STAR candidate performance objectives. In our templates, we have included sample BDI questions. And for more information, we suggest that you follow the links on your Learning Resources Guide and in your free preview ebook to connect with Nelson Scott about Interview Right, Hire Right, and to be able to help you with interview questions to identify your top performers. For each BDI question that you prepare, you also want to make sure that you have anticipated how you are going to gather the information from the candidate during that interview process, how you are actually going to record, what are the key things that you're looking for. You're going to identify the request for the information. What is your objective? What are the things that you want to hear from the candidate that would make them a candidate that you would consider your star purpose? And your candidate, make sure that you have a place to record what the candidate's response is. First of all, you want to record what the response is, and then after the interview, or perhaps even after a couple of interviews, you're going to do the ranking of those candidates. So in preparing for the interview, you need to make sure that you've got that in the interview questions. Now, you might also want to include a police information check. Working in healthcare, we work with individuals who perhaps are in need and may be disadvantaged at some point. So you might find that it's important to have a police information check. Working in any business, if those individuals who have access to banking information for um, fee-for-service revenues, you might want to also check to make sure that they don't have a history of fraudulent activity. But here's something to consider. If you do request the candidates that you are um, shortlisting to have their criminal records check, or to request the candidates to provide a criminal records check after you've given them a letter of offer, be prepared to know how you are going to respond if you get a surprising result in that criminal records check. So consider if the candidate is accepted and or given whether or not you would accept a candidate or reject a candidate, or perhaps give a probationary period for a candidate if the criminal records check was returned with a history of conviction within 5 years for violence to others, history of conviction with 5 years for violence or harm to self, or what about theft or damage to property, or maybe if there are charges laid but there are no convictions. Determine in advance what you think that how you might respond to those situations. You can give the information sheet to the candidate at the time of the interview about how to get a criminal records check. They are only required to complete the criminal records check when a job offer is made. Now, some candidates may have a previous criminal records check from other circumstances, and you can make a decision about whether or not a criminal records check done in the last year, for example, is sufficient for your purposes. Just remember that if you accept something that was done in the last year and a charge was made 3 months ago, you're going to miss that. So think in advance about what you want to have, what's important to you in that criminal records check. In your interview process is the opportunity for you to shine. So not only is this the candidate's time to interview you, the prospective employer, you want to be able to shine to attract the best candidates to you. So we suggest that you use an introduction letter. Again, at the time of the interview, the candidates generally have some time to be able to prepare and often are sitting and waiting for the next interview. So use the introduction letter to provide the candidate additional information about your practice. You may also want to add brochures, business cards, for examples from your practice. What are your practice goals and objectives? What changes do you anticipate over the next year? So in the templates that we've provided you, we've given you some sample letters about introductions to your clinic. You, of course, can customize that and make that the selling point to the candidates about your clinic. And even if they're not an employee, they could be willing to tell other people about your practice. So think of it also as an opportunity to market to the broader audience. So now you've done all of those interviews and you are receiving a number of candidates who you think are pretty good. So during the interview process, you are going to take a look at the skills that each of those candidates have had and compare it to your essential skills. In this example, for the medical office administrator or the MOA. We've already predetermined what those essential skills were, and for this practice, we've decided that we want the MOA to be involved in that billing process. So it's reasonably important that they have some previous skills. We've given that a weighted value of 5. We want the MOA in this practice to be able to do some initial triage, make sure that they've done blood pressure readings and temperatures and heights and weights and knows how to look after babies for the heights and weights and length measuring. So we've given those all a candidate weighting of 5. Now, you're going to take a look at what each candidate provided, and you're going to assess the skills that candidate had and provide them a score. And we've given you a sample rating scale, whether or not 1 is poor, they've never had any experience to it, or 5 is exceptional. They're very competent, they can do this on the first day of work, and in fact, they could train other people. And then you do some simple math to come up with a total weighted score. Now, this process might take a little time to prepare, but it's been my experience that it is incredibly valuable when you have just interviewed 20 potential candidates to help figure out which is your better choice for candidates. If you are looking at all of the people in your organization and you know you've got some really strong people in this category, but you've got some holes to fill over here, when you have the short listed ranking scores, it's going to help you plan um, the entire employee in the organization. So you don't want to have all of your employees with really high skills over here and nobody has skills over here. You want to be able to balance things out. When you're starting a brand new practice, you probably want to be able to plan for some growth in the organization. If you are fortunate enough to hire 5 employees who are all outstanding in their area, um, they don't have the opportunity to train anybody else. If you hire 5 employees who are brand new grads who haven't worked in the workforce before, and you don't have any experienced employees in that organization to train and mentor, you're not going to get very far very fast. So you want to make sure that you've got some type of a mix. So when you're starting a brand new practice and you have to hire all of your employees all at once, take a look for a mix. So you want some really experienced employees and get some additional brand new grads. They're going to be green, but you want the experienced person to have the opportunity to train, and you want that green person to have the opportunity to grow in your practice. So take a look at those opportunities as well when you're developing a brand new practice. So in the shortlisting process, we're going to evaluate each of those candidates. I do encourage the use of doing skills tests during the interview process. It helps you to make a decision about what candidates have strengths in. You're going to do the interview questions, and you might give bonus points for different things that are important to your organization. If your practice is in an area that has a strong ethnic component of a particular language, if your candidate comes in with a language in that community that is prevalent, you might be giving them bonus points. So take a look at the skills test, the interview questions, whether or not you have referrals, and the skills that they come up with, to come up with a grand total for each candidate. Then for each candidate, you're going to compare them with all of the other candidates and figure out what are the top candidates for your organization. Then you need to do the reference check. And I want to remind you that doing a reference check is not a nice to do thing. You must do reference check. It's a critical part as a due diligence as an employer. You want to make sure that you're hiring the person that you thought you interviewed. You want to make sure that you're protecting both your business, your patients, and the other employees. So make sure that you do the right reference checks. In our hiring resource package, we've given you some detailed lists about what to ask for when you're doing a reference check, how you're going to record that information in a reference check, and actually provides you some scripts so that you know what to ask the people when you're doing that reference checks. So you've done all of your due diligence and you've found an ideal individual for your letter of offer. Congratulations! You've done a lot of work and you have found the right person for your practice. Now, make sure that you have a letter of offer. This is not the time to have a handshake and a promise. You need to have some additional details. It protects both you and, of course, the candidate, and they want to know what they are entitled to. So have a letter of offer that's going to be pretty common, and make sure that you've included these key pieces of information. What is the starting salary? How are they going to get paid? When are they going to start? What are the hours? You want to make sure that this is your offer. So this is your pitch to the candidate. We really like you. We think that you're going to be a great match for our organization. And these are all the things that we want to do to be able to encourage you, and we would be so honored to have you in our practice. This is the sales job that you as the business need to make sure that you are retaining that best employee. Now, we may not be able to offer the top salary. And if a candidate is out there looking for a position and they really want that higher salary, but they have greater importance about being able to work with an organization that really values them, then this is your opportunity to try and make that shine for yourself. So use this as a marketing opportunity to sell yourself to the candidate so that you get the best candidates that you can for your organization. And of course, make sure that you've got it as a best fit. Next, you've got your employee coming to your organization and you can start the orientation. Now, the orientation can start before the employee actually gets to the office. You should be having an opportunity to contact the candidate to say, we're so delighted that you're going to be here. We're getting ready to have you here. We have assigned you a job buddy, somebody who is going to walk you through all of the places. Please plan to join us for lunch with the staff on the first day. All of these things to make the employee feel welcome. You might be able to offer an opportunity for the employee to come with their family, perhaps after our office hours, so that the family can see where mom or dad is working and get to feel part of the celebration about having that candidate coming to your organization. In the resource package, we have interviews with guest practice management experts in the field of employee orientation, recruitment, and training. And in our interviews that you have online when you purchase the resource package, you'll be able to access those interviews to find some additional tips and advice about orientating staff to your new organization. You do need to have a way to collect information from your employees. You need to get their full name. Of course, you need the social insurance number, and you might need the banking information if you're doing direct deposits. Make sure that you know how to contact that employee. If that employee doesn't show up for work, you want to be able to contact somebody else other than the employee, so if they're next of kin or some other type of contact information, to make sure that there isn't an issue that you need to be aware about. You want to make sure that you are documenting all of the things that you are giving an employee. So make sure that your orientation process is similar for each of your employees, that you give them the policies and procedures, they have a copy of the job description, they know who to contact when they come on to work for the first day of the job, and at some point, if they're sick, if they're not able to get to work when they're supposed to, who can they contact after hours to be able to give you advance notice. You want to make sure that you're recording all of the things that you are giving an employee. So that might be the keys, a computer account, additional network fobs, those things that you want to get back when that employee leaves. So if you haven't already used an employee security checklist for your existing practice, now is a great time to be able to go over those types of things. Give a checklist to each of your current employees and ask them to complete all of those things that they have, so that when they leave, and I like to wish you all good things, so when they win the $1 million lottery and they don't need to work with you anymore, that you're getting back all of those things that you've given them. So you've had your employee on board for a while and you need to do a performance review. And certainly you need to be able to do a performance review for that probationary period. So regular performance reviews are intended to be a process to formalize that feedback process. This can be done at the end of that probationary period and at the end of project goals and objectives, and at least annually. Many organizations set triggers like salary reviews to be completed after the performance review. Remember, if you're hiring a new employee, that you need to identify what that probationary period is going to be. You need to identify what the objectives are for that employee during that probationary period, so both of you know what the gold standard is going to be to pass that probationary period. If you have an employee who's struggling, you need to make a decision whether or not they are going to go forward past that probationary period. Perhaps you're going to extend the probationary period, or maybe you're just going to be able to say, unfortunately, this isn't a really good fit for either one of us. We're going to conclude the probationary period. We're going to conclude that employee relationship, and we're going to go through an exit interview process with you. And then you're ready to hire that next employee and find out what you missed in that interview process or in that training process or your determination of the essential skills, so that next time you can hire that employee that is the better fit for your organization. So the performance reviews are really important. The number one reason that employees leave an organization is that they feel that there's been a lack of recognition and praise. We need to be able to recognize employees' performance throughout the time that they are an employee. So make sure that you're not keeping your feedback just for that performance review. You need to be able to provide recognition that is timely and meaningful throughout the time that you have your employees in the organization. That the recognition is of value to the employee and to the practice. It can be as simple and as meaningful as having somebody at the pat on the back to say, you handled that patient really well. She was difficult. These were the things that I saw that you did that was engaged the patient, kept that relationship valuable, gave her the information that you needed to give to the patient, and you came to a satisfactory resolution. I noticed what you did. You did it very well. Thank you very much. So make sure that your recognition period is timely and meaningful, and that it has value. Those are the things that you're going to make a note of to yourself and add to the employee performance review process, so that 6 months from now you can go back and see the notes that you've made to yourself and say, oh yes, in May we noticed that you did this, in June we noticed that you did this, and now here's time for our performance review in October, and I want to include all of that information in the performance review. As an employee, you want to do the same thing. You want to have a file that you say, my boss said this, that I did a good job of this on these dates. So when you come to your performance review, you're not scrambling to say how you did a good job. You have some observations to say, my employees said, my coworkers said this, my boss said this. These are the types of responses I got back from the patients and clients to say that I was doing a good job. Or this is where I messed up, and this is what I did to make it better, and this is what I know now. So that performance review is still a very important part in that developing a relationship with the employee. Make sure that you follow us in our new podcast and on the resources package for additional interviews that will help you with the performance review and recognizing these employees. So we have interviews with Paula McLean, Employee Engagement, It's Not Rocket Science, Nelson Scott, Interview Right and Hire Right, and Lauren Sergi for Successful Employee Orientation. In your performance review, you're going to ensure that you have some work objectives that are planned, that have been completed, and your training objectives. And at that time, you might also prepare about what the objectives will be for the upcoming review period. So your performance review will include all of these key steps. On the Learning Resources Guide on the page that you have in front of you now, we've given you some additional contact information that you can source out a performance review process that's good for you. And in our resources package, we have some additional templates that you can follow for your performance review process. Now, at some point, employees leave our organization. Sometimes it's mutual, sometimes it's a surprise, sometimes it's a process that you didn't anticipate, and for a variety of reasons, this isn't the right fit, or there has been a breach in policy or practice, or some other cause to terminate the employee. In this seminar today, we're not going to talk about a dismissal process, but I do want to touch on the termination process. So this is a great time to be able to do an exit interview with your employees that are leaving. Why have they left? What did they like about their experience? What didn't they like about their experience? We want to be able to get some feedback from the employees so that we know how we're doing as an organization and how we can improve. Make sure that you have a clear step of all of the things that need to be done in that termination process so you don't miss anything. You have responsibility as a business owner to make sure that you have done your paperwork, you've done the T4s, the record of employment, and all of those other things. You want to be able to close the file with some summary statements so that if that employee comes back and requires a review or a reference check from another employee, that you have the information that you would provide as a reference check. You might even want to do the exit interview a couple of months after the employee is left. So you want to address it during that termination process, but now 2 months later, contact the employee and say, okay, some time has passed. Have you had any other thoughts about your time with us? Is there anything else that you think that we should know about the process? So the termination process can be the long goodbye. And you might find that the employee left under certain circumstances, thought that the grass was greener on the other side of the fence, and in fact, it wasn't. And that might be an opportunity to bring that employee back to you, either on a full-time or even a part-time or relief process. So take a look at these steps in the employee process. We've presented you with 9 steps about the hiring process, and these are things that once you take the time and put them into place, that you can reuse and repurpose and use on demand. So even when you have somebody coming to your front desk and saying, are you hiring anybody? Here's my resume. You could actually do a lot of that pre-steps because you're prepared. So I hope that you've had the opportunity to take a look at your hiring practices, perhaps add some additional steps or additional resources for your organization to be better prepared for your new practice or for your practice that is already up and operating, and how you can continue to move forward and improve on those processes. It has been delightful to have you here with us with our practice management nugget interview for about hiring employees. I'm going to pause for the moment to see if we have any chats or questions in that process, and encourage you to share your comments about the webinar today and about the free download PDF version, the preview version of the hiring employees templates and resource packages. And I hope that you're able to purchase the template package. It's only $9.97. It's available on our website, and it allows you to have access to the Microsoft Word template so that you can customize these and download them and make them available for your practice. We are regularly providing updates to our templates and our resources. So come back and visit our website often and see what new information that we have. This is Jean Eaton, your practice management mentor. I'm delighted that you joined us today and hope that you'll sign up to join us again for another webinar. Stay tuned.